The recent tragic suicides of Anthony Bourdain and Kate Spade has put mental illness into the national conversation. And while I applaud that, I am somewhat skeptical. I am skeptical because I believe that this is only temporary. I will be decidedly less than impressed if next week, or the week after, the conversation shifts to something else. In fact, that's pretty much already happening. Mental health has seemingly been bumped from the news cycle and the conversation by the topics of immigration and family separation. And while I don't deny that these are important topics, so too is mental health. Mental health needs more than a 15-minute conversation. This is something that we continuously need to talk about. This video will not be a detailed discussion about why suicides happen or why suicides are on the rise, though that will certainly be a part of this video. I recently read an article from CBC News titled, "Why Suicide is More Than a Mental Health Issue." The article in question raises a number of good points, but I am somewhat critical of the way it discusses the issue of mental illness and mental health. The article has a statement from the CDC director. She said, "Suicide is more than a mental health issue. We don't think we can just leave this to the mental health system to manage." I definitely agree with the second part of her statement. The mental health system is clearly having trouble managing the problem. We are all around doing an abysmal job handling what I can see clear as day is a public health crisis that is largely being swept under the rug. What I take issue with is the first part of her statement, that this is more than a mental health issue. Furthermore, the article itself seems to be written to back up the CDC's statement, and that is the inherent flaw with what is written and the stance the author takes. A more correct version of the statement would be that there are a variety of factors impacting our mental health, leading to poor mental health and increased suicides. That the increase in the suicide rate is not just about mental illness, that it is these other factors as well, but that isn't what the article says, nor what the CDC stated. The big picture here, leading to an increase in suicide rates, is our mental health, period. The author backs up its statement in the article by saying that in 54% of completed suicides, there was no known mental health issue. Note the words, no known mental health issue. In other words, there very well could have been an issue that was just never diagnosed or known about. The article seems to be taking the stance that because there was no known cause in 54% of these cases, that there must be something else going on besides a mental health issue. I, on the other hand, have a very different take on that particular stat. It confirms a suspicion of mine that I have long held. In my mental illness stigma video, I mentioned the fact that 350 million people worldwide suffer from depression, which is roughly about 5% of the world's population. If that number were accurate, then I wouldn't be running into as many sufferers as I do on seemingly a daily basis. It wasn't that long ago that I could look at my schedule at work and note that over half of the people on it suffered from anxiety or depression. My suspicion has always been that there are way more sufferers than the stats are taking into account. I honestly believe that if there were a true accounting of everybody that suffered from one or more of these issues, that would be closer to 50% or more. I have no proof whatsoever to back up that statement, but it is nevertheless what I believe to be true. The article uses the stat that 42% of suicides had relationship issues as a factor. And yes, relationship problems and or breakups are significantly traumatic enough events to cause mental health problems. But again, it does come down to mental health. It states that 28% of cases in 2015 were as a result of problematic substance abuse, which pretty much means drug addiction or alcoholism. As I mentioned in my mental illness stigma video, drug addiction or alcoholism can be one's way of self-treating an underlying mental health issue. In other words, the problematic substance abuse, as the article refers to it, is not necessarily the main problem, but one's unfortunate way to self-treat. Someone who is in pain, deep pain, physical or emotional, will do whatever they can not to feel that pain, even if it leads to their death. I'd also argue that drug addiction, and indeed any kind of addiction, is a mental health issue in itself. The CDC admits in the article that sometimes mental health issues are not easily detected. They suggest that not all illnesses are formally diagnosed, which is definitely my opinion, as I've already stated. And they bring up the stigma related to mental illness, which in my opinion is a huge problem. Those with mental health issues that are afraid to come forward and seek help because they are worried about being stigmatized will not in fact do so. They will turn to drugs and alcohol and anything else they can to stop the pain, which will have unfortunate side effects such as suicide or possible drug overdose. To be clear, when we are talking about the mental illness stigma, we are not just talking about others' opinions, such as family or friends, though that is clearly a big part of the problem. People suffering from mental health problems are also worried that a diagnosis of a mental illness will hurt their career prospects or get them fired from their current one, which is one of the reasons why I am a proponent of the End the Stigma campaign. The stigma certainly needs to end so that more people can be saved, so that more people will seek help, and so that we will lose less people. The CDC states that the biggest increase in suicide rates is happening amongst the middle-aged. The director stated that she found this to be highly alarming. There are several studies, according to her, that suggest that these people are the ones that are hit the hardest by economic downturns. I have no doubt that the economic hardship that we are all facing is a reason for a lot of mental health issues that are currently plaguing us. Another article stated that men are twice as likely to commit suicide as women. This stat doesn't surprise me one bit. According to society, men are supposed to be strong. Admitting that they need help, admitting that they have a mental health issue, could be a sign of weakness. And so, they do not seek help. And as a result, their problems get worse, and they kill themselves. The article ends suggesting a route that I will from now on advocate, because it seems like the right way to go. And that is, instead of waiting for mental health issues to reach a crisis point, find a way to reach them before they are there. We do cancer screenings so that we can find cancer early, not when it gets to a point where there is no hope and we can't help the patient. A similar approach needs to be taken with mental health. Community-based programs in the UK are showing promise in reducing mental health issues. Programs to provide support for people in the workplace and schools were introduced. The rates of people feeling like they want to commit suicide is still about the same. But what is different is that the rates of people that actually kill themselves is lower. The CDC also suggested that we should be further educating adults and teenagers coping skills and problem-solving skills, along with building social connections. I would take that one step further and suggest that we should be teaching in our schools about mental illness issues and about maintaining mental health. We should be taking mental health far more seriously than we do. If we increase education on this subject and end the stigma and offer a helping hand with community-based programs, perhaps people will realize more that they are not alone. And I hope that if there's someone watching this who suffers from these issues, like myself, that you will realize that you are not alone.